Hey guys, welcome to When Spirit Talks, a podcast that explores the realm of spirituality. This week, we welcome the inspirational Marcelo Oleas, and we talk about moving through imposter syndrome, the importance of loving the self, how to cultivate self-love, and ways to integrate and expand the mind-body connection. It was really fun to hear Marcelo's haunted house story, and it was interesting because during the recording, Spirit came through to nudge Marcelo to dig a bit deeper into some untapped potentials with his natural spiritual abilities. Marcelo is a passionate advocate for self-love and continuous self-improvement. He lives by the philosophy that every individual has untapped potential waiting to be unleashed. During his work as a life coach, he empowers others to embark on their own journeys of personal development, nurturing the growth that leads to a fulfilling and balanced life. So this episode was so fun to record, and I know you guys are going to love it. Let's get started. Hey Marcelo, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you here and that we can chat. So we've been friends on Instagram for so long, and I just love your positivity. I love the way you speak, and I'm so excited to dive into your story.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I've been a big fan of your work and doing this in person and taking it to a new level is definitely something very special, and I'm honored.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I want to know a little bit about your journey and how you started the path to become a life coach and where you are now.
Sure. So, honestly, I never saw myself as a life coach. It happened completely by accident. I just didn't realize because sometimes, things that we do all the time, we just become unaware of it because it's just like heck, like second nature to us, right? So, I been doing this since I was a teenager. Started out with my parents. They went through a pretty bad divorce, and then I was the one that they would come to confide in, and that's how it all started in regards to me being able to share my opinion, because that's always what I did. It's like I didn't have like background. It's just I just shared my opinion, and sometimes I was able to shed light on different perspectives that would help people, right? And that's kind of how it started. And from there on, I just, would people felt comfortable reaching out to me, but it was always just my immediate circle of family and friends. I never did it like, to in the public, right? And this was like way before social media, obviously, right? So that's kind of how it started. But then, like little by little, it just became a thing. It became like the normal thing for me to do. But even at that point, I still never considered myself a life coach. And then once I started doing the whole social media stuff, people started reaching out to me because they thought I was a life coach, even though I never had life coach on any of my descriptions at that time, right? And that's kind of how I was like, wait a minute, maybe that's what I am. Maybe I am a life coach. And that's kind of how it snowballed, and I decided to do it. And I went through the whole imposter syndrome thing because I was like, okay, I've never like, my fields of studies were far from anything to do with this kind of stuff, right? And so I was just like, no, I don't think I'm qualified to do this, even though I've been doing it for decades, right? And I eventually got over my little imposter syndrome, and I embraced it, and then it was just kind of like, okay, now I love to do this, and that was like, yes, this is what I want as a career, because once I accepted it, I felt the love that an internal love of just like like it just warms up my heart when I'm able to help somebody, and it genuinely like changes their life in one way or another. To me, it's just like one of the most fulfilling things. So once I embraced that, I was like, yes, this is what I want to do, what I was meant to do.
Wow, it's so interesting to hear that you were placed in a position at such a young age. The fact that you were able to deal with your parents' divorce, and then on top of it, being a kid and just being able to give your opinion and just say what you think, and then have that lead to your purpose and your path in life is just insane. It's like spirit came through with little tiny nudges, like, all right, this is what you're meant to do. This is what you're meant to do. And then you like embraced it.
Right.
And I love how you brought up imposter syndrome because that is such a huge roadblock for so many people. How did you get to the point where you were able to be like, this is me. I'm going through it. I'm doing it regardless of, these fears and these beliefs. How did you push through that?
Yeah, it was definitely a process, right? So around 5 years ago, because like again, I was doing this since like 16, 17 years old with my parents and then eventually family and friends. But it wasn't, and then I started my main career is I was in the music business in like the late 90s, like early 2000s. And then I started a marketing business in 2006. That has been like what my passion was, because I enjoyed it. I woke up every morning so excited to like, work with clients and projects, right? So then around 5 years ago, I randomly got a DM on Facebook from somebody that I did not know. She somehow found me online. At that time I had like in my bio on my Facebook profile, SEO expert, right? Search engine optimization expert, right? And so she was like, hey, I'm like actually building a website, and I would love some insight to see what you think, right? She was from the financial industry, successful person in Wall Street, and she found her gift. She started hearing like voices, and then she at first she was scared. And this is all the stuff that I found out just like I'm kind of like Cliff Notes version, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she's telling me all these things that she of how she's building her website, because she's like, I'm leaving my career and I'm going to do this. I have embraced it, and like I have helped all my coworkers, and now I'm ready to like to do it to the world, right? And so she's telling me all this stuff via DM, and I'm like, okay, listen, let's just jump on a call. It'll be a lot quicker. I could give you, I could have a better understanding and give you a better, know-how of what you need to do and for what you want to achieve. And we're talking business, right, about her website and all that stuff. And then I'm explaining something to her, and she just completely cuts me off. She's like, I'm sorry, but she's like, when I hear a message from my guide, I just need to let it out. And she's like, you are great at what you do, but she's like, you are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. She's like, you help people, but your level of help is way beyond business, is way beyond this. She's like, your level of help is just like you have no idea how you're supposed to be helping the masses, right? And it was funny because right around that time, I was starting to feel that passion that I had when I would wake up so excited to like go ahead, start my job, my work. I was losing it. It was just kind of like, oh, okay, I got to do this today. I saw like that fire was kind of like slowly like dimming a little bit. So when she said that to me, I was just kind of like, okay, like, because I was contemplating like, what should I do next? Right. I still was like, life coach was not something in my head. Right. And she was the first person that kind of like put that seed in my head of like, okay, I knew that I did love helping people, and at that time I was helping through business, and I still do, right? But it was beyond that. It's like, okay, now what I have been doing, my close family and friends, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing just to the general public, to help more people. The more people that I can, the better, right? And that's where my journey of like fighting my imposter syndrome started. Because she said it with such certainty that I was like, yes, you know what? But as soon as I got off the call, it was just kind of like, nah, that's not, it can't be, like, and but sometimes the universe just puts things in our place, because like after that, it was one thing after another. Random people again, like just giving me the same or very similar message of what I needed to be doing, or calling me a life coach, or people reaching out from me, like, from internationally, from outside the United States, asking for advice. And it was all these little things that, like, now all of a sudden, I was always comfortable speaking with the people that I know. Now I was, getting some challenges thrown at me, speaking to people that I didn't know, And it's something that I had to be careful with. I don't know their background. I don't know how they might react emotionally. So, but it was a learning process, and it was a beautiful learning process. And eventually, that's what gave me, I guess, those little steps that I was taking, right? And not even purpose. They were coming to me, and I was accepting them. I was like, okay, yes, I'm gonna do this, right? Instead of like, no, 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 I'm sorry, I can't help you. I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. So it was those little steps that just kind of like um decrease my fear and just increase my confidence. And once I felt that, like, that fulfilling feeling of like this feels right. And that's when it just kind of like, I accepted it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go full force with this.
Wow, what a story. And it's funny because when you were talking about her chiming in and stopping you and saying, wait, I think you have another purpose, I got confirmation from spirit myself. So I got goosebumps all over. And then again, as you kind of rewound and went back to that message of your purpose being more than what you were doing at the time. And it's incredible that you had all of these little opportunities knocking at your door and that you actually open the door to accept them,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes when those opportunities come knocking, it's like that fear sets in, the imposter syndrome sets in, and people close it off. Like that energy is now closed off. But the fact that you were able to accept it and like walk into that and step into that, that is incredible. And it probably did give you that confidence, because the more you do it, the more you open up to the possibilities of this beautiful life and these amazing skills that you have to show off, like the more that continues. So that is so cool.
Absolutely. And even like I started getting some messages from like actual therapists, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, like how I can't help them. But it was just that's what made me realize. I was like, okay, we're all human. We all have like our need of overcoming certain individual challenges that we may have, right? So the way that I learned to, I guess, shift my perspective, because like I mentioned, I was in the music business for like almost 10 years, and I've met so many talented people, right? So I met like from people who you could put any piece of music in front of them and they could play it with no problem, right? But when it came to like their creativity, if they didn't have that in front of them, they were like, even they were incredibly, talented at their instrument, but there's a lack of something that you don't have it in you. You could become an expert in anything that you want, right? But then I dealt with another group of people who were amazing, but could not read a single note of music, right? And that was just in them. So that's basically like the shift that I made. I was like, okay, maybe I didn't have that book knowledge that some other people pursued, right? And that's what I was using as my thing, like, no, you're not qualified to do this, Marcelo, right? But I was like, maybe I was blessed with a gift that I have, and I could, use that. And now that I know that that's in my foundation, I could go and learn. So like, yeah, I love reading, I love doing all that kind of stuff just to keep, learning and improving.
That's so inspirational that you were able to follow that passion and now look where it's taken you.
And it's still the beginning for me. It still is. I'm still transitioning from my main business that I've been running forever.
Mhm.
But like this, it's been and I'm so grateful for people like you who have like always been doing that nudge. Marcelo, do it, do it, do it, do it. So I have these past 3 years specifically, I have definitely been taking more drastic steps, where I've been leaving my business, my main business, and putting more time into this. And it's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So, what would a session with you look like if someone wanted to contact you and reach out because they needed help with a specific thing? What would it look like?
Yeah, so basically, um everybody is individually, and stuff that might work for me might not work for somebody else, right? So the main thing that I like to do is like I like to like have a better idea from them. So I like to listen. And once I understand them, where they come from, what they could perceive as a big challenge might be minuscule to me, or something that I like. So like that's something that is very personal. And that's why like personal growth, personal development is literally that. It's personal, right? It's no like one size fits all. So basically, once I had that understanding, right, a lot of, well, at least what I had realized, a lot of the answers we already had them within. It's just that like once I see their field of vision, then I could start sharing. What about this? Well, what about this? And all of a sudden, they start seeing in their own mind. You're right. You're right. So all those doubts that they might have had, or those blocks that were like limiting from what they want to like pursue, all of a sudden those walls start to come down, and they're doing it by themselves. I'm just sharing different points of perspective for them, and that has been huge for me.
You're like shining the light on different aspects or different options that they might not be looking at, because sometimes we have
We all
blinders
have the
on.
blinders. Yeah, 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 100%.
And it's hard, like when we're in the zone and we're not open mentally or energetically to see different options. And so you probably help so many people just by shining lights on different aspects.
And that's even when I was dealing with my parents, like because like especially when you're so emotionally tied to something you're feeling and you're hurt, it's like, this is how it is and this is what this person did to me, and then it's like, okay, I understand that, and you have every right to feel that, but now what if what if this person, and and that works for anything, for personal, romantic relationships, business, like anything in life. Is just like, we always have a certain way that we tend to see things from our own personal history, our emotions. And once we are able to broaden that view, it just makes such an incredible difference.
What is a common roadblock that you find typically holds people back from owning their well being?
Yeah. After working with all kinds of people, with all kinds of challenges that they were facing, the one thing that I have been able to kind of bring it back to has always been a lack of self-love. Um, and that's why it became one of the main things that I focus on, right? Because I have found that once that self-love foundation is so healthy, right, everything else just becomes easier, right? And this was the case with me. And um we tend to be, a lot of people, unless we're going through something like very difficult, in a specific moment in our lives, we tend to, like, if we're happy and things are going, we have a good job and we have a roof over our head, food, we're like, oh yeah, like I'm happy, and yeah, I love myself, right? um and that's how I was. I fell into that category. But then when I started to actually really ask myself that question, or even the way that it happened to me was, I decided to do the self-love in the mirror exercises a couple of years ago, right? And immediately, it was just, at first, I didn't even want to do it, because it's like, duh, of course you love yourself. I've always been a pretty confident person, so like, to me, that was just kind of like, no, that's I don't have issues with that, right? But the first time that I did it, it was just like such a reality check, right? Immediately I had this little voice in my head saying like, Marcelo, this is so silly, what are you doing, and that's when I realized that, superficially, I was happy. I did love myself, but my soul, there was something that was lacking so much, and that was another process that I went through, like, for days. Like, I decided to do that the first time, and I just said it twice, and I was like, okay, I don't believe it. That voice is so loud in my head. I'll try again tomorrow, right? And I kept trying and kept trying and kept trying. And then little by little, I would just look in the mirror, like literally look in my eyes and say, I love you. I love you. And I just kept repeating it. And like every time that I said it, I just felt a little more ease. Right. And then one time it just clicked, and like I just got the chills. Like, that's what I felt. Right. Like, it just felt like so genuine, like that soul, that part of me inside that didn't realize that it was missing this from myself, it just finally believed it. It was like there was no doubt about it. Yes, I do love myself, and that's the part that, like, so when I'm helping people, even though they might seem like a confident type of person, right? And then I tell them this, and they're like, that's usually the first reaction I get. Oh, that's so silly. I do love myself, And then I'm like, okay, just try it. And usually that same reaction happens where they realize that like there is a part of them that yes, that doubted it or just didn't believe it as they should. So once that self-love, once we learn to like nurture that self-love and it becomes so strong and powerful, then we're not as afraid of trying new things, right? Because when that self-love is so powerful, if we fail, we know that there's a lesson behind it, right? And now we just pursue in a different direction to try to achieve the same goal, right? So that nurturing that self-love has been like, to me, I think like the greatest foundation for any challenge that you know most of us face. If we are able to strengthen that, it just it's a domino effect. It's a beautiful ripple effect that everything else just becomes easier to you know to kind of overcome those challenges.
I love how you made the distinction between loving yourself when everything is going great and then loving yourself in every moment. I love that you also did that exercise in the mirror because I remember when I first started out, I did a similar exercise where you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're giving yourself these positive statements, and it felt so awkward. Like it really does feel really awkward to look at yourself in the mirror, look in your eyes, and like say all of these nice, incredible things, or even just saying, like, I love myself,
Mm-hmm.
because at first it does feel like strange and it's a bit uncomfortable. But then the more you do it, that like strangeness kind of fades each time. So that's an awesome tip.
Yeah, I mean, like the way that like it felt for me the first time I did it is like if I was an actor and I was like practicing my lines, you know, it's just like, okay, yes, I could play this role, but it's not really me, you know. And then once I was like, okay, this is not a role that I'm playing. This is something that I'm trying to do for me in real life right now. That's when I was like, okay, because it was easy to kind of just be like, oh yeah, I could do this. Anybody could technically do it, right? But like, are you believing it? And as soon as I like, okay, this is not a role that I'm trying to portray. This is who I want to be. And that's when like the challenge started. But it's like now it's just like, and I still do it, you know, to this day, years later, is like, but now it's different. Now it's almost like how you get in your car and you just drive. It just happens, right? So now even if I look through the rear view mirror and my eyes like you know me, it just happens instinctively like I love you. It just so I'm constantly replenishing that cup, you know, like I like to say that like when like obviously we don't want to have our cup running empty, right? But I don't want it to just be full either. I want it to be overflowing all the time, you know? So um that's why like even a reflection, if I'm walking in the street at like in a store and like I catch my reflection, it now just happens instinctively like I love you, I love you, I love you. And it's that's the way that I'm constantly just making my cup overflow.
That is beautiful. So
Thank you.
beautiful. Your persistence really paid off. Now, I know you just gave an amazing tip, but I want to know, is there an additional tip that you might have for people who are wanting to nurture that self love?
Yeah, what makes it a lot easier is at least for me it helped out enormously, and that was gratitude. Okay, when we tend to focus on the things that are going right for us, and even with ourselves, like there's so many things that we take for granted, right? A lot of the times we just think like, oh, I'm gonna be grateful because I got a raise. I'm gonna be grateful because I was able to buy something. I got a gift. No, there's so many things beyond that we just completely overlook, right? So um me personally, as soon as I open up my eyes, thank you. You know, that's the first thing that happens. Thank you. Because it's a blessing, right? I opened up my eyes. I'm breathing. I could get out of my bed. You know, there's so many things that many people would love to have, you know? So once we start focusing on those things, our mind um finds it more difficult to like let those negative things, you know, take over space in our head, right? So once we fill our mind with things of gratitude, it just by default just makes it easier for us to accept like the self-love, right? That nagging voice of like, no, this is silly. Like, I mean, I do a gratitude rant. I've been doing gratitude journaling for like years, right? And then a couple of years ago, I learned about the gratitude rant, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. That was something different. And basically what it was, and at first, just to like really be able to do it, I even set a timer on my phone for 5 minutes, right? And I was like, okay, for 5 minutes straight, I just got to go and say everything that I'm grateful for, right? And keep in mind, I had already been doing gratitude journaling for years. So I was like, oh, this is going to be a breeze. But when I'm on the timer and I'm saying, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this, I'm grateful for this, 30 seconds, I was done. I was like, oh my gosh, like, what else am I going to be grateful for, right? But the point of this exercise is, so what I started doing is just going around my house. Oh, I'm grateful for my chapstick. I'm grateful for my pen. I'm grateful for my toothbrush. Anything. It doesn't matter what it is. The whole point of this exercise is that nagging voice of negativity, you just start to rewire your brain where you do not allow it to take any a major space in your head. And that is the point of that exercise. And you're able to achieve that, and it becomes second nature again. It literally, you have to like think hard to actually let negative thoughts, like stay in your head. It gets to that point, and it's an exercise, you know.
I had never heard about the gratitude rant, but it reminded me of this example, and I don't remember where I heard this from, but it was like as if you have a cup full of water, and let's say you put a drop of blue food coloring in it, and that blue food coloring is your negative thought that you're dropping in. So now the water that was clear is now muddy with blue food coloring. The more you put in that clear water, meaning those positive thoughts being that clear water, eventually over time, that cup is going to turn clear again.
And that's literally how it is. I mean, like for weeks when I first started doing the gratitude rants, um, and once I accepted that, I was like, okay, it's not silly for me to be saying that I'm grateful for my toothbrush, because that's, I understood that what the exercise was about, right? And it's just incredible. I mean, you literally have difficulty trying to like let negative thoughts ruminate in your head.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And the mind and the body are so connected. Do
Mm-hmm.
you have a simple way for people at home to start expanding that mind body connection?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think gets overlooked so much is our breathing. I started doing like the Wim Hof breathing exercises maybe like 7, 8 years ago, right? And it's great, but like even beyond that, I'm talking about just like being conscious of your everyday breathing. If you start to pay attention to that, you'll realize how many times you're actually not breathing.
Yes.
you know so one of the things that with the mind and body connection, when we're like scared or having an anxious moment, one of the first things that starts to happen is like we tend to hold our breath, or our breathing becomes very shallow, right? So just like as the mind does that to our body, if we change our body, it flips that to our mind, right? So that's like one of the most basic things, and it works so incredibly well, right? So if you're having one of those moments, right, and like I said, we all have felt it when we're scared about something, that we're a little anxious, and you feel that tightness in your chest, we tend to like clam up like this, right? So those are all the physical reactions that our body has to like the thoughts in our mind that are scary, that are anxious. So if we reverse that, it literally, and sometimes it doesn't make it just those thoughts disappear. It just gives us a better chance at pushing through them, right? So simple, like change your breathing in those moments. Take the deep inhales, and you'll start to see, like you'll literally feel that difference happen, and it happens in seconds. So it's like a very simple trick. We all we all have it. We don't have to worry about carrying a toolbox with us. It's in us already. And simply moving your body too, so like in those moments, like I said, in those moments of fear, we tend to like close up, because that's our protection mechanism, right? So likewise, in order to reverse that thought in our head, do something different. I like to go like this, like I'm Tarzan, because now it's like not only am I changing my posture into more powerful posture, but that sensation, that I feel that little tingling, that's enough to kind of like, hey, okay, it rewires really quickly that thought that you might be having, that you're not strong enough or that you're scared. And those are simple little tricks that like it'll make you realize how connected the mind and body truly is, and how you're able to kind of, in a way, manipulate, when we need to do it.
Yeah, you brought up the Tarzan tap. So for me, I do a
Mm-hmm.
very similar one, but it's the thymus tap. Basically, you take one hand and you're tapping in between like your collarbone and your heart. And
Mm-hmm.
it helps just ground you physically and like bring you back to center.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, the breath is it's our life force, it's our energy. And when we start to shift that, we shift our energy. And like you said, that mind body connection is so apparent that it just shifts everything in positive ways. So thanks for sharing
Absolutely.
that.
Yep, my pleasure.
Before we get into our spirit segment, I know that you grew up in a haunted house, and I
Mm-hmm.
want to know maybe a cool story about your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a whole other set. I mean, literally, I lived there for 17 years. I grew up there, right? So, um, when I was a child, obviously at first it was scary because I didn't know what was going on. So a lot of the times I would go running into my parents' bedroom, crying like, "Oh, something's happening." But like, it was voices that I would hear, shaking of my bed. I would see, shadows. I would hear footsteps or stuff like that. That was like the normal. And the thing, it wasn't just like to me either. We had a pretty big house, so like during the holidays, a lot of our relatives would come over and stay. And if you stayed at my parents' old house, is like you were most likely that you experienced something. But then after a while, once I realized that, it was like, okay, all these things are happening, but I'm still okay, and even though they might have been scary at first because they were unknown, right? After a while, I was like, okay, technically they're not harming me, you know, I'm good. So I started to like, feel more comfortable with it. And then I remember one time I was probably like 11, 12 years old. I was really into BMXing at that time. And I had gotten a new bike chain for my bike, and it was too long. So I had to take like one of the links out so that it would fit my bike. So I'm in the garage. My dad had like a little workshop table and a vise. So here I am. I'm putting like the chain in this vise so that I could like, with a pin, not so I could like knock the pin out of the link. And bike chains are long and clumsy. So I'm like putting it in the vise, but every time, as soon as I would hit it, the chain would just fall. I needed like an extra pair of hands to like hold up the chain over here, right? So I tried, and it's not working. I'm getting frustrated, and I'm like, okay, if there is anybody here, can you just please hold this chain right here? So I set it up again, and here I am. I'm like tapping it, tapping it, tapping it. I'm like, oh, it's not moving. Tapping it, tapping it, tapping it. And I was able to pop the link out. And then I was like, okay, thank you. And I'm like jetting out of there. But it was like, it was like little things like that I was like, after a while, I was like, okay, they're not bad.
Yeah, what a fun story.
Yeah.
That's so
So, and
cool.
that's how it happened. And then ironically, like I thought it was the house, but technically everywhere that I have lived, even when I was in college, in like dorm rooms with like, with my roommates and stuff, I would always still hear stuff,
Mm.
even where I'm at now in Florida. It's a new built house. Nobody has lived here before. So and there's things that have happened to me here too.
So I'm going to
You know,
stop you
so
there, just like the other
mhm.
girl did, because I just got confirmation again, and there might be some untapped potential here to look into. Because I
I
think you
think so.
have
Yeah,
some
I've been
gifts.
told that a couple of times. Yeah, so that's definitely something I got to let it flourish, because I know it's lingering in there.
Yeah, there's something there. So I can't wait to
Right.
see what happens when you start digging in deeper. So now we're going to go into the spirit segment. And I want to know, what is one thing you always include in your daily routine that helps you stay spiritually grounded and balanced that might help others do the same?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the gratitudes, but like right as soon as I say thank you, before I go into my little gratitude rant, I say a prayer. And to me, it's just whatever I feel at the moment. It's just like a communication, and that to me just helps me. It's like a nice little summary of maybe the things that happened to me the previous day. So it's just a little thank you, specifically to me, to God, and then also just like a little okay, to set the foundation for the rest of the day. Like, okay, I ask, there's nothing wrong with asking either. And that's how I start my day. And it just adds a little extra nice needed fuel for me.
Yeah, it's so funny because I do the same. So it's still that like old Catholic school girl in me. I always do that prayer, but I do it before bed.
Okay. Yeah. And I think those are the two essential moments. Like when we wake up to start the day, and then to go to bed, it's like, I do gratitude. I mean, it's like it's constantly going in my head, but like I'll specifically think of things that happened in the day that I'm grateful for, because it just helps me to go to bed in that mindset of like, like it just helps me to get some good rest, to like really be able to re-energize myself.
Yes. Now, you already mentioned one cool story in regards to spirit, but do you have another favorite?
Well, this one was more like in regards to religion and
Mm-hmm.
and like God itself. So like you mentioned, like with the Catholic religion, I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic schools, and later on in my adult years, I started to get a little like uh I don't the feeling was different, because what I would notice is that a lot of people would memorize prayers, a lot of people would always go to church, but their actions were just like so far from being like a good person.
Yes, they're not walking the talk.
Yes. So I was getting very jaded, when it came to religion, and nothing against Catholic in specific, because I would notice this in every religion, um, that yes, people would practice when it was time to practice, but when it was in real life, like they were far from it, right? So a couple of years ago, I went I attended a Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within workshop, right? And we were in the middle of what was it, the breaking limiting beliefs, something like that, something like that. It was like a meditation segment. So anyway, in this part of the workshop, we had to write down things, that limiting beliefs that were holding us back, right? And I wrote down like some like things that at that moment I was working on, and I was done. And then I'm looking around, and everybody's like writing essays. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is going on here? I felt bad. I was like, I'm looking like a fool just sitting there doing nothing. So in that moment, it just happened to my head. I was like, oh, let me just add one more thing to this list, right? And it was that religion is full of hypocrisy. Right. That was like a limiting belief that I was having. And it was really bothering me a lot. Sometimes even just like somebody saying, oh, I'm going to church. It was like, even, and they could be like the most sweetest and genuine person, but I would just be like, oh, I just felt that, like, I didn't like that feeling that I was getting. So we go into the actual session. We already wrote everything down, and I don't know how they do this, but like, I mean, it's a huge auditorium. They completely black it out. Like you can't see anything, right? So, but anyway, our eyes are closed, but I was like peeking, because I was like, okay, is it really that dark in here? And yes, it is pitch black. You can't even see the person right next to you, right? So they start this process, and they're really digging into you to feel these limiting beliefs, right? So now all of a sudden you start hearing people crying, yelling, screaming, like everywhere. It's like a lot. It's like chaotic, and you just start feeling those emotions throughout the whole room. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I'm not feeling it, I'm like, okay, I guess maybe my limiting beliefs that I was focusing on weren't that great. So out of nowhere, I'm a little frustrated with myself, because I wanted to be having an experience that everybody else seemed to be having, right? And all of a sudden, I just felt my body just like go up in the air, right? And And I'm like, oh my God, my instinct was to open my eyes and like, hold on. I was like, oh my, like what's going on? And I was like, no, don't fight it. Keep your eyes closed and just go with it. And I don't know how high I went up, but like and my eyes were not open, but like I could visualize myself floating in the air in the same auditorium, but it was empty. There was not a single soul in there. Then not even the chairs were there. Everything was empty, empty. And then all of a sudden, I see this image in front of me, right? At the time, I couldn't make out what it was. It was just like kind of like it was tall and like it was more like a glow, right? And then I start hearing this voice. And the voice was like, it does not matter where you go, how you go. It does not matter what people say you need to do. I am here with you, and you are always here with me. And that's the only thing that matters, right? And I get a little sentimental because like it was so impactful, and I just started bawling because I just felt like this huge love in my chest, right? And that was my breakthrough moment out of that whole event. And it was the least expected thing because that was just like a random thing. I was like, I guess I'll just add this to my list. And it was just incredible. It was like that was
Wow.
the most beautiful, beautiful moment that I needed. I desperately needed it, and I got it. You know,
I'm like just sitting here
yeah.
soaking that all up. That's an incredible story.
Thank you. Yeah,
Wow.
it was
Amazing.
beautiful.
Now, Marcella, what is one final piece of advice you have for listeners who are trying to improve their spiritual well being?
I think, and especially because after what I told you, that I felt like I was losing my faith, in one way or another. I think that whatever anybody decides to believe in, whether it's God, the universe, anything, it doesn't matter. But it's like find that one thing, because like faith, in our challenging moments, it's one of the greatest fuels that we could have. It's what helps us to sometimes really find the energy to push through when we need it the most. So to me, like that is important. And like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It's an individual thing. But just find it, because there is a higher power that is always there with us. And when we need it, it will always be by our side. It always is by our side. It'll just extra be by our side.
Yeah, just like you said, their spirit is always
Mm-hmm.
there. But when you set that intention to ask for that support and you actually ask for support, you'll notice
Mm-hmm.
what you're getting back.
Absolutely.
Where can our listeners go to learn more about you?
Yeah, Marcelo Oleas on any platform. That's pretty much how you can find me.
Okay, Marcelo. So I don't know if I told you this, but I'm doing it to everyone who comes on as a guest. I'm pulling a tarot card for everyone. So
Okay.
I pulled yours and I'm going to show you what it is. So you got the Emperor, which
Okay.
is represented by typically a male, but it doesn't have to be physical gender. But you're strong, you're disciplined, you're a focused protector and a leader who makes plans and then sees them through. So I felt like it's the energy of that authority figure, and you're imparting all of your knowledge and structure. Like you're able to help people find and take actionable steps to help them with whatever they're going through. So I thought it was really cool. Like you're just so strong and centered.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. The message for everyone else in regards to this card is about taking time to dive into that divine masculine side of things. So set structured goals and then follow through with them by taking those small steps each day.
Awesome.
So, Marcelo, thank you, thank you, thank you for coming on today. It was such a pleasure to speak with you and hear about how you're working with people, how you're supporting everyone, and all about your stories.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I appreciate you, and it was an honor to be here with you today.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoy the podcast and love to listen to it, subscribe, follow, or leave a review. You can connect with me on Instagram at live.and.breathe.reiki or on my website at liveandbreathereiki.com. Until next time, don't forget, when spirit talks, it's time to listen.